Well, hello, Vice Band. Welcome to the melody assignment, where we're going to be building off of the harmony. That's what I have in front of me on my screen here, that we created in our Chrome Lab Songmaker harmony assignment. Now, just to review here, and I'll play this in a second, the form is really important that I chose for this is a same, similar, which is my second phrase, different, third phrase, same, fourth phrase. So I went same, similar, different, same. And in my harmony video, what I said is that my similar phrase, which is here, that you're going to notice is the same as my first phrase. The contrast or the difference that I'm going to add there is going to come with the melody. And you'll notice that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this so you can hear what my harmony sounds like without anything else added to it. So that is where I'm starting today. That is my harmony. And based on my harmony and the chords that I'm using, I can then construct a melody. And well, what's that going to look like? Let me show you. I've added a melody line above my harmony. And I'm going to explain how I arrived at this. And I will say a lot of this is also a lot of listening and a lot of adjusting. This didn't just get put in all at once and I left it. I've been adding and then playing and then changing and then listening again and then changing and then listening again and then changing and listening again. And as you add more in and as you make changes, you're slowly but surely going to arrive at a melody that you enjoy listening to. And that's what I'd like you to have at the end of this project. So this is mine. And let me play it for you. And again, your melody is going to be yours. You're going to make yours different than this. And so that's my melody. I'll scroll back to the beginning here. Again, notice just real quickly here that I kept all of my harmony in the middle octave, and that saved me an entire octave up top for my melody. It's very important that I keep my lower octave empty because we'll be adding a bass line to that in a future assignment. We need to have access to our lowest sounding notes. Now, you should also have open, in addition to your Chrome Lab Songmakers, you need to have open this Chrome Lab Songmaker melody assignment. Now with this, listed at the top is what we're making. Essentially, the product you're turning into me is a link, and it's the one that Chrome Lab Songmaker gives you when you hit save. You're putting that into Google Classroom, and you also have to save that link in your Chrome Lab Songmaker links, Google Doc. Hold on to this because you need the harmony and the melody as a starting point for our next assignment. There are instructions on how to save and submit there. And what are we going to learn? There are chord tones and there are non-chord tones. And we're going to want to use chord tones a lot in ours, so we need to be able to identify them. Non-chord tones we have to use carefully. So I'm going to teach you some ways that music theorists and composers, which we are now, ways that we can use non-chord tones to achieve certain effects. And we're going to learn about the melody's role in a piece of music, and we're going to learn about the way form, which you started with your harmony, can help us with creating and entering our melody above that. So definition of melody, a couple things from the dictionary here: an agreeable succession or arrangement of sounds, a rhythmic succession of tones organized for aesthetic whole, meaning that it sounds good together. It is the main part of harmonized music. So like I kind of sum that up here, that melody is the main part of a piece of music. And it is what, like if you are humming or singing a familiar song, you're probably going to be humming or singing the melody. So it's really important that we put one in that we enjoy listening to and that it's going to grab the attention of our audience. Now, you're going to have quite a bit of freedom with your melody, but I am going to demonstrate some ideas to make sure that the notes that you pick for your melody are going to work well with your harmony. That's important. Now, where are we going to place the melody? I pointed that out to you. It's in our highest octave. We're going to keep it all up there above our harmony. That's also going to make it easier to hear. That's important too. Now, where do I start? We have to review the form that we chose. And I pasted down here the information from the harmony assignment, just so you don't have to go back and open up that Google Doc. But your melody is going to follow the same rules. So if, for example, I picked same, similar, different, same. If you picked that one, the melody in your first phrase is going to be the same as the melody in your last phrase. And then perhaps the melody in your second phrase, measures 5 through 8, you're going to make some tweaks to it. And then in measures 9, 10, 11, and 12, your third one here, you're going to make major changes to it. It's maybe not even going to sound the same as, or it's not going to sound familiar to the melody that you used in your first and last phrase. And that contrast is a good thing. But we want to follow the form that we already established. Remember, harmony establishes our structure, and then everything else can be built off of that. So how do I know what notes sound best? Notes that are in the chord, or this in Chrome Lab Songmaker, are the same color as the ones in your harmony are great choices. We want to prioritize those and use those the most. Number 2, notes outside of the chord you can use, but you need to use them in certain ways. So you want to be careful how you use them. Otherwise, they might clash a lot, and that might not be enjoyable for you or your audience. And then think in phrases. We don't want just note by note. We want to think about a line of notes that work over 4 measures. And that musical line is very pleasing to us when we listen to it. Repetition is okay. As we stated with the harmony assignment, our audiences actually like that. And if you picked a form that has similar, this is a great place to make those changes that provide that contrast if you kept the harmony the same. I copied our chord menu down here. Over the course of this, if you decide to change a chord in your harmony, you can access that here. You may want to do that. You may discover that, you know what, I really did want to make a change here. And this also is a way to, by the way, identify your chord tones. For example, I listed here that red, yellow, and green chord tones, red, yellow, green. The colors match. That's what we're looking for with chord tones. We can use those in any measure, anywhere. They will work well. They will sound good. Now, what if we want to get outside of the chord tones? How to use non-chord tones. This is cool because these can add some really interesting elements to our song. And I want to show you some common ways that composers do this. I actually used all of these in my melody. And my arrow is pointing out the non-chord tones. So over here, I'm going to start with passing tones. Passing tones connect one chord tone to another. So it's passing through from red, orange, and then yellow. Yellow is a chord tone. Red is a chord tone. Orange is there kind of making a bridge between the 2 chord tones. That would be a passing tone. One of my favorite words in all of music theory is appoggiatura. Appoggiatura is kind of the opposite of a passing tone. For an appoggiatura, love that word. We start with a chord tone, And then we actually jump to a non-chord tone that is above another chord tone. So orange is a chord tone. And then I jump over dark green, which is a chord tone. And I go to the note above it, which here is blue, and then return to green. So jump and then step down is how you would use Appoggiatura. And then a neighboring tone, you start on a chord tone, you go up, which in this case, light green to dark green, back to light green, and return to the chord tone. So really common things to use in here. If you're going to use non-chord tones, experiment with these because they're going to work well in your melody. Okay, scrolling down here, I have some ideas. I love having some suggestions for you. Number one, I put this all in capitals because it's important. Stick to mostly chord tones. These will ensure that the notes work. It is okay to have some gaps and rests in your melody. You will see some of that in mine. It doesn't have to be a constant flow of notes here. Start with a single line of melody. There will be an advanced option later, but I only want one line of melody for this. Follow the form you decided in your harmony assignment. Repeat your melody to match above your harmony when it repeats. Focus on small changes in the similar category. Small changes are actually sometimes sound more major than you think they are when you listen to them again. And end your song with the lowest note of the chord. So in a one chord, red is the lowest note. So end your song on red. And then our action steps are going to be outlined in the video already. Opening up your Chrome Lab Songmaker links, opening up your harmony assignment. I demonstrated that earlier in the video. And then I'm going to shift over here to my melody that I've already input. Now, let's talk about some of these things here. You'll notice in the first measure here that I start on red, which is a chord tone, and then I move up to orange, which I'm going to consider to be a passing tone here. I'm actually putting a rest instead of putting an orange note. I'm leaving that out because I like that sound of a rest there. It's implied to our audience that there's a yellow note there. You almost hear it if you listen because you have another passing tone above it before returning to your chord tone. But you'll notice that I have more chord tones here than non-chord tones. In my next measure, I am almost entirely chord tones. And again, I'm just adding in a passing tone here between a chord tone and a chord tone, a passing tone. And then the rest of that is chord tones because I know that they're going to sound good. Moving on over, I have mostly chord tones in this measure, two passing tones just because there are two notes from orange to dark green, the way that this is built. Now, I happen to like little scale passages like this where we have notes connected. I think this is an effective tool to add. When you're practicing your scales on your instrument, this is what it's preparing for. Having scales in our music is really common, so I added one here. Now, I said, and again, scales are going to use passing tones, by the way. So I've got a lot of passing tones going on. You may find that that's one of your more common ones, depending on the way you write your melody. Here, this is where I took my first melody, again, these first four measures. This was the measure that I call same. And I reproduced this one already exactly in my last four measures. So I needed to make some contrast for similar. Let me find the right measure here. I needed to make some contrast for similar. So my chords down below in my harmony are the same. My melody is different, but I kept some elements of it the same. For example, I started on red, but then I jumped higher to yellow, which is a chord tone, so I could use it. And then, Appoggiatura. We found it. I jumped up to blue, which is not a chord tone, and then returned to green. Over here, we have examples of neighboring tones. I added that in. Blue is a chord tone, green is not. Blue and then green. Even if there's a rest in between, that's still functioning as a neighboring tone. And again, it's okay to have these rests and gaps in your melody. It will make it more interesting. Then moving on, I used the same melody, blue, dark green, blue, dark green, blue, then dark green, and I shifted it down. Dark green, light green, dark green, light green, light green, dark green. I took a pattern and I moved it over because I liked the pattern and I liked the neighboring tones. So you can do that too. You can establish a pattern and then you can use it again, but shifted to fit the chord of the next measure. And then I liked that scale here, so I added it back in. So this is where it's similar, but there's some contrast. I added in the Appoggiatura. I started using neighboring tones here. And I put this little pattern here in these two measures that is not the same as the pattern over here in our first two measures. Then we get into where it is different. And this, get into this. This is my third phrase. This is where there's lots of contrast going on. And what I did was, again, I used all chord tones in my first measure. I used all chord tones in my second measure. And I liked the pattern of these notes jumping up and down. We call it an arpeggio pattern, would be something that I would probably call this. And then I used a bunch of passing tones and neighboring tones. Neighboring tone, neighboring tone, neighboring tone, neighboring tone, neighboring tone, neighboring tone, and then chord tone, passing tone, chord tone, neighbor tone, chord tone, neighbor tone, chord tone, and then chord tone. I have a lot of chord tones, but I also added in a lot of fun neighboring tones and passing tones to change the sound in my different phrase right here. And then I'm back to the same phrase where I have the same as my first four measures. I ended again the same in my last four measures. Let me scroll back to the beginning here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this. And having that repetition at the end really helps our audience know we're wrapping this up. We're at the end, and it has them excited for, I've heard this before. I recognize this. And audiences enjoy that. Other things here, think four measures at a time and think about a flowing line of music. Don't be afraid to make changes as you're writing. If you hit play and you're not happy with it, go back and experiment. You might want to have a second song maker open to experiment on, and then transfer that information over into this one. But I am done. I have created my melody. Yours, of course, will look different because it is going to be yours. I'm going to hit save, copy link, Control C, go over to my link saving document here. And I'm going to add this in, melody assignment, and date it. And there it is. I am done. So I can't wait to hear yours. Make sure you submit your link when you are